After Peppa, George is definitely the character from the Pink Pig series who has appeared in the most episodes, which makes him the second most important character in the show, at least until the birth of Evie. But despite being so important, do you have any idea of all the suffering the little pig has gone through over all these seasons? And how he can be considered the excluded child of the pig family? Hearing problem. The most recent fact involving the little pig was the revelation of something everyone already suspected. George really has a chronic problem. In recent episodes of the Peppa series, it is shown that George doesn't see, or rather doesn't hear the world in the same way that most of us do. And truly, there are kids who might be watching this video right now who have this very same condition as Peppa's little brother. In these episodes, we can see that because he doesn't have full hearing, George doesn't understand, for example, when his mom praises his dinosaur and then takes it away. The little pig just gets sad because the cereal box showing his favorite toy was taken away from him for no reason, since he didn't hear what Mommy Pig said beforehand. Or when Daddy Pig asks him to put his seatbelt on inside the car, but he doesn't hear it. So Peppa puts it on for him. This reveals that his own family had no idea about the boy's condition and just thought he was too little to understand anything they said or asked. Because of this, we can say there is a before and after of George getting his hearing aid given by Dr. Bear. However, this raises the question, how could this failure to detect George's problem have made the little pig's life more complicated? How did it hinder his communication, even preventing him from being able to speak properly? Without a doubt, those were very hard times for Peppa's little brother, and it's about this, and about other things like being his parents' third favorite child that we're going to talk about in this video right now. Get ready because we are going to blow your mind. Speech problems. As we mentioned just a little bit ago, George's hearing problems were never mentioned before, but they definitely hindered our beloved little pig's development a lot. That's because the series doesn't make it clear how long George has had this limitation. This is because he could have either been born with it or developed it at some point during his 3 years of life. And perhaps you don't know this yet, but the fact of hearing the voices of our parents and the people who take care of us is what made us able to learn how to speak just like them. Therefore, if George didn't correctly hear the words that Peppa, Daddy Pig, and Mommy Pig spoke to him every single day, that highly limited his ability to speak. That's probably why, until very recently, the only word the little pig knew how to say perfectly was the one we all know, dinosaur.
Dinosaur.
However, after starting to use his hearing aid, we see that George immediately learned the most spoken word in the series. He said, Peppa. And the Pink Pig herself was pretty surprised, since that was truly the first time her brother said her name, at least correctly. So we can imagine that the poor little pig had his speech development delayed for months or years, simply because his parents had never noticed that he couldn't hear as well as everyone else. And if we stop to think about it, this was something that harmed George quite a bit and left him even further behind compared to his classmates, especially if we compare him to Edmund Elephant, who has a higher intelligence than the kids his age. Poor George, but better late than never. Few friends. Taking advantage of the fact that we mentioned Edmund Elephant, let's talk about something else very sad involving George. Have you noticed that he doesn't have very many friends? And the reasons for this are numerous. For example, the fact of not being able to hear well, and consequently, not being able to speak properly, might have been one of the factors that influenced this. However, there are also other reasons. Have you noticed that there are far fewer kids George's age than Peppa's age at Madame Gazelle's playgroup? Yeah, while in Peppa's little brother's age group, we only have, besides himself, Edmund Elephant and Richard Rabbit. On the other hand, at the age of the show's main character, there are countless students, which makes it easier for her to have more friends and harder for George, since they are far fewer. And as we said before, Edmund is smarter than the others, which makes him closer to the older students than necessarily to the boys his own age, leaving Richard Rabbit as the remaining friend option for George. However, if we go back a few episodes, we will find out that George and Richard don't get along all that well. If you think about it carefully, you will remember the episode where the two become great enemies. since both of them have toy dinosaurs and don't want to share with each other, and then one destroys the other's sandcastle. Despite making up later on, we see how it is much harder for George than for Peppa to manage to make friends, since there are far more older kids than younger kids. Always kicked out. Besides this, we know that the fact of being younger was often the reason why George couldn't even play with other kids. This is exactly the case on the day Susie Sheep went to play at Peppa's house, but the two friends simply excluded the little pig, stating that he was too little to play with the two of them, which clearly wasn't true. And that wasn't the only time Peppa and her friends kicked George out. On another occasion, he was kicked out of the treehouse for the simple reason of being a boy, which was a very ugly feminist act on the part of the pink pig and her friends. This is because on that occasion, George became extremely sad about being thrown out when he imagined they were all going to play together, united and with friendship, regardless of gender. In another situation, George is excluded from playing with Alex Pig because his toy dinosaur is apparently scaring his younger little cousin. So, if we really were to elect a character who is the most kicked out or excluded by the other characters in the Peppa series, that person would undoubtedly be our little George. And let's agree, he didn't deserve to be treated this way by the other kids. If you're enjoying the video, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss any new videos. Sick. And we can see that George is genuinely persecuted by the creators of the Peppa cartoon, since he is, to this day, the character who has gotten sick the most times in the entire series. The first time happened when he caught a cold from playing in the rain without his rain hat. Besides getting quite sick, and therefore feeling really terrible, the little pig was also mistreated by his own sister, who very selfishly was bothered by the fact that George was coughing during the night and disrupting her sleep.
George, please don't sneeze so loudly. This is impossible.
Which, between us, was a very selfish moment for Peppa. After all, George wasn't coughing or sneezing because he wanted to, but rather because he was sick. And the worst part is that this wasn't the only time the little pig caught a cold, because the same thing happened a second time in a later season. Mommy Pig was sick this time, and she was the one coughing. Poor George tried to help by bringing her a tissue to blow her snout and ended up receiving a sneeze loaded with bacteria and caught a cold immediately, leaving both of them sick at the same time, and this time being very well taken care of by Peppa and Daddy Pig. All of this officially makes George the character who got sick the most times in the Peppa series, even though he wasn't the only one. Forgotten son. Now let's talk about an extremely sad subject. Did you know that George is the least protected child in the pig family? Yeah, as bad as it might be to say this, it's the truth. This doesn't mean that Daddy Pig and Mommy Pig don't love George, but it means they are much more careful with Peppa and now also with Evie. But there are reasons for this. The first one is the fact that both Peppa and Evie are girls, and this naturally already shows that they need more care. Girls wear bows, dresses, and usually have longer hair that needs to be brushed with hairbrushes. All of this means that they need more time dedicated to them. Furthermore, speaking of Evie now, she's just a baby who can't do anything by herself. She needs someone to give her a bottle, change her diapers, and she can't even take a bath alone. All of this explains why their parents, at this moment, need to be more careful with her than with George and Peppa, who can do all of this by themselves. As for Peppa, well, she's the star of the show. Because of this, every episode, one way or another, ends up having the pink pig as the main character, or at least someone important to the story. But in George's case, he's just the middle child, being the only boy, and until very recently had a hearing problem completely unknown by the rest of the family. So he lived in his own little world playing with his dinosaur, being forgotten several times, and in some cases, not even appearing in the episodes. Because of all this, it isn't completely absurd to say that George, in some moments, was the forgotten son of the pig family. And because of that, we feel very sorry for him, adopted son. But what if I told you that there might be a reason for this rejection of George? Would you believe it? There is no proof or confirmation from the creators of Peppa Pig, but there is a theory that makes a lot of sense that claims that George would actually be the adopted son of the pig family, and because of this, he is treated with contempt at times. According to this theory, the real mother of our dinosaur fan little pig would be none other than Auntie Dottie. In other words, if this is true, in reality George wouldn't be Peppa's brother, but rather her cousin and Daddy and Mommy Pig's nephew. This theory arose in the episode Horsey Twinkle Toes, where a toy horse with little wheels arrives as a gift from Auntie Dottie for Peppa and George to share. We find out in this episode that Daddy Pig's sister lives in another country, and until that episode, she had never been mentioned. And even though Peppa is 4 years old, she had never heard of this Auntie Dottie, which means that maybe Mommy Pig's sister didn't want to be known. But why? Maybe because she left a baby with her sister for her to raise a few years ago, and has, since then, disappeared a little bit for things to calm down. This would explain why Peppa doesn't remember her, since George would have arrived at their house when she was 2 years old and was too young to remember anything. Years later, Auntie Dottie herself finally appeared in the Thanksgiving episode, and at no point is it mentioned where she lived or what she works with, showing that the information was highly classified. Besides that, when she sees George, she treats him with much more affection than she treated Peppa, demonstrating that she has a greater affection for him, which would make sense if she is really his mother. If this theory is confirmed to be true, this would explain why George is sometimes forgotten or pushed aside. He would actually be someone else's child, Auntie Dottie's. This way, everything would make a lot more sense. Wouldn't you agree? We'll stop here, but you can still keep watching more incredible videos. Just click on either of these two appearing for you. Until next time.